Yo, I've been chipping away at Disco Elysium for fucking ever at this point.
Yeah, you have been playing that one for a
Yeah.
while.
I started like a good ways before my trip. I played a little bit on the plane. I played a ton when I got back because I was sick. I spent like a couple days where I was just like, okay, let's bang it out. The game's pretty long. I'd say like maybe a little bit too long. It told me Steam told me I played it in 30 hours, but I don't think it counted the time I played on the plane or something because that feels slightly too little. I feel like it was 35, but maybe I'm tripping. Maybe it.
Well, you say that, Willard, but I've only played a little bit of it, and I should come out with what I've played. It was really good, but I'm also not a big narrative gamer. I would say
Narrative gamer. Yeah, you're not.
Yeah, but like I played it, and I felt like I played for a long time. It's like, all right, cool. I closed up the game, and it had only been like 45 minutes or an hour. And I went, what the fuck? Like I felt like I did so much, and like
That's crazy.
yeah,
Maybe the game is just too taxing on the human brain because it is
Maybe.
actually because the writing of the game is so it's really good. The prose is incredible, but it's sometimes so esoteric that you're like, what are you trying to say here actually? 'Cause it's difficult. It's written very superfluously.
that the opening where like you wake up in the
ancient reptilian brain is telling you about the big ball that you live on with all the apes.
God, that drove me so insane multiple times. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Now,
like,
Joe, did you play the original or Final Cut?
I played the original for like the first 10 minutes and stopped, and then I played Final Cut.
It's very important that you play Final Cut because it has voice acting for almost everything.
Yes.
I could not imagine playing Disco Elysium the original.
Yeah, Kuno.
Oh my god, Kuno! I love Kuno so much. Kuno don't give a fuck. Kuno doesn't fucking care. We'll talk about Kuno in a second. So Bradley and Tyler, do y'all kind of know like what Disco Elysium is? It's been out for a while. It's very well regarded.
I know what it is, but it's on my to playlist.
Yeah, like I've seen the game, but I wouldn't be able to tell you like what the plot is.
So Disco Elysium is a game where you play as an amnesiac detective who, after a drinking binge, is completely forgotten everything about his past. Now, you still know certain encyclopedia trivia stuff, but you also don't really know about the world. So it's a good vehicle to do world building and teach the character how the world works and like what the setting is like. And the way it works is you have 30 facets of your personality. Stuff like empathy, composure, but also stuff like the shivers, which is kind of like your sense for the city itself, or stuff like Espiritus de Corps, which is like your cop sense and like how you can tune in with other police officers, or stuff like Half-Light, which is your fight or flight sense, or the weirdest one, Inland Empire, which is like, I can't even explain Inland Empire. It's like your sense of taking something and creating like a narrative around it, or like
It's like your egotism almost.
No, it's like your imagination. Like you can talk to inanimate objects and kind of visualize things in a different way. But it's different from visual calculus, which is like your true detective. Like I can look at a crime scene and calculate that the bullet came from this angle and like be able to look at something and spatially do that. There are 30 of these, and they are all voices in your head. So as you interact with people, all 30 of them, like empathy will be like, hey, she's feeling this way. But then Half-Life will be like, hey, dude, you should have run away right now. Things are looking a little sketch. And they're talking to you, and sometimes they're battling with each other, which is when the game is like the most interesting, when like the voices are not cooperating. And then you have volition, which is a very interesting stat, which is like your final line of defense against all the 29 other parts of yourself, where it's like it's what's keeping you sane and composed and kind of like arguing against some of the other voices. So the way that it ultimately plays out is like those voices, depending how much you level them up, you will get like certain new dialogue options, or like certain things will only pop up like, hey, my perception noticed that it smells funny in this room, and if it wasn't high enough, it would have failed that roll and I wouldn't get that line of dialogue, so I wouldn't know that. So the way it ends up working is that these voices kind of teach you how to role play your character, where they kind of guide you to make the detective the way you want to be. And no matter how you play it, the detective is a fuck up. There's no way to play this as like, hey, this is a suave, cool guy.
He lost his fucking gun.
Yeah, dude. That's some of the when you have to report that your gun and badge are missing, and the people at the station are ripping you and you asshole.
So fucking funny.
It's so funny. Hold on, quick interjection, real. So yeah, like it's interesting. Harry's always gonna be a fuck up. That's his name. It's a slight spoiler. You do get it fairly early. It's technically not his exact name, but it's not important. And you have a partner called Kim. Everybody loves Kim. He is notoriously known as like the favorite character of the game. His level of empathy and composure dealing with your bullshit as you're trying to solve the case is insane. The case itself is that there is a person who was murdered and hung behind a hotel that you stay at. And this person has been there for 7 days. You show up, you get them out, and you start investigating what happened. And it gets really interesting where it's kind of like... I'm going to get into slight spoilers of the murder, but it's really not going to spoil too much. It's like the Union killed him, and they admit to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a little more complex than that, but they're like, hey, all 8 of us killed him. Are you going to try to take one of us in? Because if you do, we're going to kill you. Because in this town, the Union runs, like, the police... Like, there is no police force in this town. The Union kind of handles crime here. And the Union is striking against a larger company. So there's, like, this corporation versus the working man vibe. But the Union's very corrupt, and the company's very corrupt. And you're kind of trying to sort it all the way through. And it's interesting because it's like... The police force in this world... It's not a proper police force. They're a voluntary organization that exists because there's no proper government in these islands. The islands had an uprising against a king to turn the place from a monarchy to communism. And it worked for a little while until other countries didn't like communism, kind of like the real world. So they came in and just completely wiped out the communists. They went hard. So now what rules this land is a coalition of nations that it's complicated, but they're not really a proper government. So in that sense, there's no police force in the way that our world has it as well. So it ends up that like the world building of this game, I would say, is the best part. It is some of the best world building of any piece of fiction I've ever gotten to, because it's like it's just so interesting to learn about the history of the islands. It's really, really, really well fleshed out. There's even books and stuff that you can read that tell you more about the world and characters that like... So there's this overarching thing about the Union versus the company, and also like what form of government will take over the islands in the future. Will communism come back, or will moralism or ultra-liberalism win, etc., fascism? And you can play your character to lean to one of those sides. Spoiler alert, no matter which side you lean on, the game's going to take a shit at you, because it's basically saying that extremism on any one of these sides is bad, and there's a lot of extremists in this game. The game can be very fucked up.
Yeah. I think in the first 10 minutes you talk to a neo-Nazi, if I remember correctly.
In the first few minutes you talk to Measurehead, who is all about race theory. The thing is... Every location in this world is fictional, and all the races are kind of fictional too. And he talks in all caps, so I stopped playing the game for about a week after I talked to Measurehead, because that conversation was so exhausting. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. He is definitely the worst character in the game. I don't want to hear any argument against it. And I'm glad that I didn't have to deal with him much. I avoided him at every turn. But it's like it's weird because the game it seems like it'd be this detective game where you're solving things. You're not really solving that much in like a Ace Attorney or Danganronpa kind of way, where like you the player have to solve it. You're doing checks and going down lists and like methodically solving the case. So it feels the actual solving of the case feels a little linear. Though you can solve different parts of it at different times. Like you can get motive, and you can get murder weapon, or you can get whatever at different times, but like once you're investigating one thing, it's linear, and you don't have to do any logic on your own behalf.
Yeah, that was the thing that I kind of like, what kind of drove me. Like, Disco Elysium is a weird game where it's like, I want to experience it, but it's a game that's so not what I want to be playing, because it is very much like, it's very close to a point and click adventure game from what I've played, with just some like RPG-esque
I
checks.
would actually say it's hardcore an RPG. It is maybe a little bit too much of an RPG for me.
Yeah, it like where it's just like getting that guy out of the tree was just like check failure after check failure for me, and I'm like, fuck, and I eventually had to go and find some other item to come and bring around to get to a check that could actually pass.
Yeah, that's kind of fun, but it sometimes, like, there was a thing in this game where I failed a 92% check, the most important check in the game, by the way. I failed it, and it completely changed who my partner was for the finale of the game, which is just crazy. I get an 8% chance to fail it, and I nailed it. So I went ahead. I did near the end of the game retry checks, Joe. During the beginning, I just let it rock, but near the end, I was like, I'm ready to finalize some of these quest lines. But that one, I was like, because it was at 8%, I'm actually going to keep the failure, because it feels like almost like Destiny that I finished the game in this alternate way.
And I do like that, because it's kind of like, because that is how Fate is sometimes, where it's just like shit happens, and I think that's a really cool part of, like, that's why I like tabletop RPGs, is that you could be like the best in your world, but like you happen to roll the 1 or whatever, like that changes the outcome entirely. But I do understand how that sometimes is just very unfair, where it's like, I've been building my character to do this one thing, or make sure I guarantee to pass this one check, and I fail it. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, it does. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and I'd like, for me, for Disco Elysium, is that it is a lot of like just reading, and kind of like, it almost feels like a very, God, how do I describe this? Interactive movie almost, where you're just, there's not a lot of gameplay, I would say.
Well, I don't know. The way you can navigate certain conversations, it's mostly what's going to change in this game. You have access to a lot of things. There's a couple quests where you're locked out if you're not internalized the right political mindset, or you're not a certain type of cop. But aside from that, you can do almost everything. But what changes a lot is the kind of person Harry is, and I think that's where a lot of the gameplay comes in.
I do too. It's one of those things where, like, I don't know, like, there's not a lot. I just wish there was a little bit more interactivity. Now, I also, when I first went into this game, I thought there was going to be some sort of combative element. There is not, at least from what I played in like 3 or 4 hours.
The climax of the game is a very, very tense combat sequence.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, it's tough. I was on the edge of my seat. The thing is, Joe, I'm not. So some people start this game, immediately click. It was a wall for me. I had to really work for it. But once I got that initial like puddle of mud, I got so immersed, and it became like the experience that I was told it would be. It's incredible once you get past it. I would give it like a 4.5 out of 5. The only reason it'll probably be a 5 once it kind of marinates the themes a little bit more as well. There are some frustrating things. First of all, if you play this on a console with controller or on the Steam Deck like I did, the game is just not built for it, man. On day 3, you open up this area that's kind of like a beachy island area that you don't have access to. Navigating that area was a nightmare, and the fast travel system in this game is probably the worst fast travel system of any game I've ever played. You have to be standing at a particular spot in one of 3 spots in the game, which is in front of buildings, and it doesn't tell you that you have to be standing there. You have to look this up on Reddit. And then you can open up the fast travel and travel to one of the 3 fast travel spots. It's really weird. But that jank aside, the game is so special. It's also, like, so fucking funny. This is one of the funniest games I've ever played. I, like, just, like, hip, like hip hurting, rolling in bed with my Steam Deck. I can't believe I'm doing this kind of shit. And it's not even like doing the crazy wacky shit that's funny. Sometimes just like the normal stuff is so funny in this game.
We mentioned that, but the cops ripping you about losing your gun and shit it had me dying. I had to stop playing the game because I was laughing so hard. It's so funny. Really,
there's this quest line involving a church. So this church is the wildest thing, and it's the one thing I'll go into detail. Outside the church, there's a tent of teenagers that are trying to get hypnotic dance music, which is this weird techno that's new to this world. They're trying to get it happening, but they also kind of want to make a drug thing in the church so they can manufacture drugs. I talked them out of it, but I went to the church, and there's a programmer in the church that was working on a video game. And the video game was insane. The video game was made on radio waves, and it would be like you play D&D through radio waves, and the project went tits up, and like you uncover like why it was so fucked up, and it feels like the studio like lamenting on how hard it is to make a game, especially when it's that ambitious. She's in there, and she's investigating why. So they made a commit. Basically, they made a git commit that just disappeared one day. So they lost their entire project because of this. And the backup copy was also gone. So one day they just lost most of the game. And they're like, how the fuck did this happen? There's a spot in the church where if a radio wave passes through it, it gets completely blocked out. And that's what happened. So she's investigating that. Meanwhile, in the rafters of the church, there's what's called the Crab Man, who is this who is this like Mexican dude who climbs around the rafters of the church like a gremlin, and he's just up there worshiping the goddess of the church, and he never comes down. I got to talk to him once. I don't know what his deal is, but he's there. So you end up making this truce between the club people and the programmer. And this is an option you can take, but like I'm like, hey, here's the deal. Let them move into the church. Meanwhile, you finish your research. I'm going to help you finish your research, and they will as well. Once that's done, you can leave the church, and they can have their dance club in the church. And it, like, the questline just kept going and going. And it climaxes with this dance sequence where you and Kim and all the kids just dance so fucking hard that you pass out, and then the city itself starts legitimately talking to you. Like, you ascend to another plane where the city of Revachol and Martinez is talking to you. It was a transcendent experience. Near the end of the game, there's another transcendent experience where I was like, I cannot fucking believe this is happening. The game has some twists that are just genuinely 13 Sentinels twists. It has two in particular where it's like, you completely broke my understanding of this world. And it's like, but in 13 Sentinels it happens so much where it's like, yeah, that's what it's all about. And here was almost like, this is a 13 Sentinels twist in the wrong game. But it was really fun going through it and understanding the world, and man, it's just great. Some conversations are too long and they drag on, but if you can push through it, I think this is like a incredible experience. And like, I don't know, Joe, maybe give it another whirl.
I mean, I definitely want to.
Maybe you can hit that point that I did where it's like it gets addicting.
It definitely, like, I was getting there. I definitely was, but it was just one of those things also where it, like, I could very see myself like, this is either going to be a game I hate or a game I will literally spend the next 48 hours playing.
It got like that.
Did you see the Twitter I just sent you?
I'll read it after because I was talking. I'll read it like next topic and I will comment on it.
That's one of my favorite, I think, Disco Elysium things that I've seen.
I need to check it out. It's
just a small little comic.
I will also bring up one little character called Kuno. Kuno is the worst case scenario of an edgy teenager where I think 90% of Kuno's dialogue has the word fuck or shit in it, or the F slur that he would just casually drop. And Kuno has a little friend called Kuno S that's like this weird wild child that's like his girlfriend. I don't even know. It's so weird. Kuno's the best. He's top 5. He's so fucking funny. And like, I don't want to spoil it, but I did some shit with Kuno near the end of the game that like you can miss out on, and it was really worth it.
Cool.
I think Tyler would hate this game, and I don't know if Bradley would like it, even though he's among us. He's probably I've turned him into the other narrative guy.
That's the thing. Like this one's been on my radar for a while.
I don't know. I think
this
you and
game
Emmy
has been on my radar for the narrative part.
But I think you would hate it, Tyler. Like I don't think you would get past the wall, and I don't even blame you because it's the most European game I've ever fucking played. It is aggressively European. With Bradley, I think you would like. I don't know. It depends how political you want to get, Bradley. I think there's something in there for you, but I think you would get bored in the beginning as well, like Joe did. So,
I think
don't know.
If there was one thing that I would want to like change about the game is that I think they can make the beginning a little bit more. I don't want to say streamlined, but a little bit more understandable, like what the fuck is happening.
I would say streamlined. The game has very bad tutorialization, and like I missed the body for quite a while, and the game
the one that was
clearly wants you to go do the body first, and I just completely walked in the opposite direction. It needs to be a little more linear at the start. I
think so too. But like at the same time, like I think it does something that a game that I really want games to do is really establish like what your game is like from the beginning, very early on.
Yeah.
And I think the game does that really well, where it's just like you're going to just have to figure things out. You got to click around.
I think doing the body, talking to Kuno, and turning and reporting to your station are both very indicative things of what the game will be like. So it's true, yeah.
Yeah,
but you could completely miss it and go talk to Measurehead and not play the game for 2 years, like I did.
Yeah,
I talked to Measurehead and literally dropped the game and picked it up recently again.
Yeah. But I think once I got to the part where like I was like, okay, I understand what I need to be doing now. The game really started tumbling, and now I really want to play it because I was having a great time playing it. It just was one of those things where it's like,
give it another try, and like
I will for the 10th time.
I think Bradley, you should give it like 5 hours if you ever see it on sale.
Yeah, I will say I still want to at least try it.
Yeah, I think you and Emmy would crack the fuck up at some of this shit.
Yeah, play with Emmy. That would be a good time.
Like, among all the stuff I'd heard about this game, I never even heard about the humor.
Yeah,
oh
exactly.
my god, yes.
No one talks. It's one of the funniest games I've ever played. Christ,
so good.
And you feel like sometimes it's very not right humor, but it's so funny. It's so good.
There's just dropping the F slurs.
You can fail an empathy check and then turn this guy into an incel by talking about the cock carousel and how the girl that he likes rides the cock carousel, and he's like, oh, I get it.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and then it's like, imitate the cock carousel, and you just have to imagine what the detective is doing to imitate what a cock carousel is. And then there's the last thing I'll say, there's this check I failed where I try to intimidate these dudes. And I failed it so hard where I'm like, hey, Kim, give me your gun, because I didn't have my fucking gun. So I get the gun, and I fail it so hard where I'm like, the detective puts the gun in his mouth, and he's like, please listen to me or I'm going to shoot. Please listen. And the failure was so bad that he ends up, he's like, dude, one of the voices in your head is going, dude, this is so bad. Just do it. So I got a game over by trying to intimidate a guy, failing so bad that I shot myself in the fucking mouth while begging them to listen to me.
Oh, that's so good.
It was wild. Save frequently if you play this game, please, because
yeah.
I also got a game over by sitting on a chair that was so uncomfortable that it killed me. Yeah, it's wild. But that's Disco. One day I will replay it and do it a little differently too. But I did get a little exhausted, but I still loved it.
All right, mark it on the calendar. 0 days.